Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning into my live stream. I just wanted to make sure that you guys can see me, you can hear me. So just let me know with a little thumbs up in the comments down below, and we will get started with this live stream. So I hope you guys have all had a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I'm really excited to see what we can create in 2021. So it looks like the sound's working, which is great. We're getting some nice little comments coming through on that. So back to my point that I was going into there. I hope you guys have all had a Merry Christmas. I hope you're all really excited for 2021. We have got a whole bunch planned for the Dev Squad Academy, including our game jam, which is currently going on at the moment. Our game jam is an event where people are making a game in just 14 short days, and it's actually due to end in just 4 days, not 4 days, the 4th of January, which is 2 days away from now. So for those of you that want to check out the game jam, make sure you do go ahead and check it out on itch.io. The link for that is in the description of this video. Also, if you're interested in checking out some of the games, you can play them for free on there as well, which I'm going to show you in just a second. So this is the game jam. So the game jam is that event that I talked about. It's 2 weeks making a game, and along the way you're going to learn a hell of a lot about Unreal Engine, game development, and also there's the potential to meet new people and just pick up skills that you otherwise wouldn't have had. So the theme is on here. There's a whole bunch of submissions already. There's 6 entries to the game jam already, and there's still 2 days left. So some people are really smashing it. They're really getting ahead of things, which is really awesome. So for those of you that haven't submitted your game already, make sure you go ahead and submit it before January 4th. I also want to take some time to say, for those of you that are getting involved in the game jam, don't leave it until the last minute before you submit this. Give yourself a day to allow for any bugs, any packaging issues, and make sure that you can just get it up on itch, because I know you're only allowed files that are less than 1 GB as well. So please do bear that in mind. So enough about the game jam. Let's have a quick talk about what this game jam is this developer live stream is going to be all about. So for the next hour, I am just going to be working on EmberVein, which is the co-op multiplayer experience that I'm working on with the rest of the team of mine at Virtus Studios. So we're going to be setting up some materials, importing some assets, and teaching you along the way as I go through and do that. We're going to be importing these assets, setting up the materials, and I'm going to be explaining exactly what I'm doing, how they work, and giving you a bit more of an advanced look into how we set some of our materials up over here at Virtus Studios. So I'm really excited to see what you guys are going to be able to take away from this, and it's also an opportunity for me to just do what I love doing most, which is just working on EmberVein. So while I'm doing this, you guys can also ask any questions that you have about game development as well. They don't necessarily have to be just Unreal Engine development. If you want to ask a question about your game development career or anything like that, by all means, you can just go ahead and ask. There is no shame. With that, if there is any questions that I'm not able to answer for any reason, there is a Discord server in the link below where we have 5,000 other aspiring developers in there that are very active and talking about game development. So if you need a helping hand, or you just need to team up with someone or anything like that, join that server. The Discord is down below, and just get to meet some people and help join one of the biggest, most growing game development communities that there is out there. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the engine and get started. So like I said, for any of you that have got questions, like I said, just chuck them into the comments down below. What I'd also like to say is, for those of you that are watching this live stream, I really appreciate your support and thank you for tuning in. To help me make these live streams get out to more aspiring game developers just like yourself, I really appreciate it if you can drop a like on this video, as it just helps with the YouTube algorithm and getting this live stream out to the community. So I can see there's currently 74 people watching right now. If we can get you all to just drop a little like on this video, let's see if we can get it up to 70 likes. But for now, let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so what you're seeing here now is you're seeing the Unreal Engine editor that I've been working in inside of EmberVein, and this is actually the build that we use for prototyping. So in EmberVein, we've got two builds. We've got a live build, which is all done in C++, and then we've also got a prototype build, which is done in Blueprints, which very quickly allows us to prototype the game feel. So trying to see how movements work and attacks work and all of that good stuff. And it's very easy and very quick to prototype this in Blueprint, whereas C# is way more efficient, but in terms of prototyping, it's not that great. So what you're going to see here, if I dive into the engine, is actually a view of the prototype version of the game, EmberVein. So you can see we have got Jack Savage, one of our characters here in the engine, which is really cool. So you can see here, I'm able to run around, I'm able to sprint, I can do light attacks, I can do heavy attacks, which is really cool. Now, all of this is a work in progress. But the thing that I want to show you guys is how we're going to be setting up the materials. So if I go ahead and open up my Discord, I'm going to show you some images of the materials that we're actually going to be bringing to life. So not only the materials, but also the static meshes. So I'm going to pull this up for you in just a second. So what we've been doing at Verta Studios is the way that we make our game is we have a concept artist concept it out first. So they draw this. And that is what you can see on the screen at the moment. This is a drawing of one of our levels, the shipping bay within EmberVein. And what you're going to see is they've actually gone straight on top of a BSP block out of the level. And then what we're going to be doing is taking that BSP block out and adding in all of those different assets that transform it into something that looks like this. Now, the assets that I'm going to be working on in today's video is some barrels, some shipping containers, some crates, some of the smaller bits, so I can really home in on the look and the style. These are the first assets going into this brand new level of ours. So let's go ahead and dive in. So the first thing that I'm going to do is actually get my assets. And while I'm downloading those, what I'm going to do is make myself a brand new folder. And in here, what I'm going to do is just make a couple of subfolders, because when it comes to importing your assets, especially your materials and your textures, it's very important to organize those. If you don't organize them, it is just going to be a mess. It's going to be a lot harder to work on later on. When you're just doing one or two materials at the start, it's easy, even if you haven't organized them. But once you start adding 5, 10, 20, or even 100 textures, it gets very, very difficult. So what I'm going to do is, in my EmberVein assets folder, I'm going to create a brand new folder, and I'm going to call this static meshes. And then I'm going to add a new folder called materials. And then I'm going to add a brand new folder with the name textures. So now in here, if I need a static mesh, I can go straight to the static mesh folder. If I need a texture, I can go straight to the texture folder, or straight to the materials folder, so I'm not having to go through a whole list of static meshes and materials and textures all combined. So with that done, what we're going to do is go to the static mesh folder first, and this is the first type of asset that I'm going to be importing. So I'm going to download those in the background now and get them ready to bring into here. In the meantime, for any of you guys that have any questions about game development, EmberVein, or even Unreal Engine, by all means, you can go for it. Okay. So in terms of where I store my assets, I actually store these on Google Drive. It's really cheap, or free even, to store loads and loads of assets on there. You can collaborate with your team really, really easy as well. But for now, what I'm going to do is just dive straight into getting these in here. So what I'm going to do is start off with bringing in my big shipping container. So what you're going to see in a second is the files that actually make this up, so you can get an understanding of how these assets can actually come to life. So you will see that in just a moment. Okay, that's not great. 2 seconds. Let's try a different file, as that one is not exporting very well. So let's try the barrels. Okay, so we're going to start off with the barrels, as there was an issue with the big shipping container. So on my screen here, what you should be able to see is I have got a big old folder full of assets. So I have got some textures in here, those being some diffuse textures, some metallic, some normal, some rough, and some height maps. And then I've also got the model itself. So what I'm going to do is start off by taking the model itself here, which is SM_barrel, which is a naming convention I like to use just so we know what type of assets we're working with. SM meaning static mesh. I'm going to drag and drop this into my static mesh folder. I'm going to make sure that if we don't want this to be a skeletal mesh, we turn that off. And then from there, we're just going to go ahead and import this in. And then once I've imported this in, what you can actually see is I've now got my mesh. And what we don't have on this right now is any color. So right now it's just completely white. And quite frankly, it doesn't look that exciting. It doesn't really look like it's part of a game or the EmberVein world. And that's where the textures come in. So if we go back to our main EmberVein assets folder here that I've got, I'm going to go to my textures folder, and in my new textures, that's where I'm going to be bringing these in. So I've got barrel diffuse 1, 2, and 3, and we've got all of these. So I'm going to simply drag and drop these in. We're going to give it a couple of seconds to load up, and then we can start forming a material which can actually go onto this mesh. So a material, for those of you that don't know what a material is a material is essentially a group of textures or even one texture and a bunch of parameters that determine how it is going to look in your game, in the engine, so how it's going to look for the player. So what I'm going to do is go to my materials folder. I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a brand new material, and we're going to call this M_barrel. And then I'm going to double click on this, and then within here, this is where the magic is actually going to happen. So this is where we're going to be telling, what it should have color wise, then how much it should shine, how much depth it should have, and all of this is going to be controlled by the textures that I'm using. So in this material, I'm going to go to my content browser, go to my textures folder, and I'm going to take my diffuse texture first. And then I'm going to go ahead and drop that into the RGB. If I press apply, give this a couple of seconds to load up here, you can see we've got a preview. And now, if I actually go to my static mesh, go to my barrel, the static mesh that is, and if I go to my material slot and change this to my M_barrel, which is the material that we just created, you can see suddenly it is going to come to life, and it's going to look like it's part of that concept that I showed you guys. But what you're going to notice right now is it's very dull, it's not very exciting, there's not really any shine, and there's not really any depth either. And that's where all of these other textures are going to come in, because diffuse is just going to control the colors, but then we've got normal for the depth, we've got our metallic for how metallic it should be, we've got our roughness for how shiny it should be, and all of that good stuff. So let's go back to our materials folder, open up m_barrel and take a look at bringing these in. So go to our textures folder once again, and the next thing we're going to bring in is our normal map. Our normal map is essentially going to simulate some fake depth on our model that isn't built with geometry, but is actually built in the material itself, and you're going to see you are going to get some bumps. So I brought this texture sample in here by simply just holding down T and left click with that selected. Or if you don't want to do that, you can just right click and type in texture sample and then set your texture in the details panel in the left hand side here. But then as we drop this into our normal there, you can see we suddenly got a whole bunch of depth that we didn't have before. So you can see that it's even got the shine there too. So if I go ahead and hold down Alt and break that link, you can see where it started. And then as I bring it into my normal there, it really starts to come to life. So if I go ahead and bring that static mesh in and look at it now, you can see it's got a whole bunch more detail. It doesn't look as flat as it did before. And normal maps, they are used to help with performance, because what we don't want to do is have lots and lots of geometry there, because that's where it's going to start hurting the performance. You're going to get lower frame rates. And by having the normal maps, you can just put all of that geometry, the simple geometry that is, into our material, and that's a lot cheaper on the performance side of things. I'm going to bring this barrel into our scene so that we can see how it's going to look as we're working on it. I'm going to put it into a nice piece of light over here so we can really see this. So what we're going to do now is open up our material and carry on adding more texture types into this. So the next one is our metallic map. If I hold down T to bring in this texture sample, I can then hook this up to my metallic. And now what you're going to notice is it's going to feel a little less shiny. Oh, sorry, it's going to feel a little less plasticky, because this is telling the engine how metallic this is. So should it be more diffused like it's plastic, or should it be more shiny like it's metal? And where you're going to really see this come to life is once we bring in our roughness texture. So if we go ahead and hold down T, bring in our roughness, and if we hook this up to our roughness here, you can see now it's got a little bit of shine on it, especially to our orange there. So now it feels a lot more glossy, a lot more metallic. And if I go ahead and press apply, you can see the top of that now is much, much more shiny. And you're really going to see that if I go into the game that I've got here and then get nice and close to the barrel. You can see there is now a lot more detail. It feels a lot more like a high quality asset. And if you really want to see that close up, open up the asset just like this. And for me, that actually looks quite good. And the artist that actually made this did a really good job of determining just where the shine should be, and that is where the roughness map comes in, because the darker areas don't have any shine, whereas the lighter areas on that roughness map are going to have more shine. So let me just go ahead and show you that. So if I open up this map, the roughness that is, the darker areas here are going to be more the black bits. The lighter bits are more sort of the orangey bits, and those are the ones that are really going to have the details and the shine coming through. Those are the bits that you really want to see. And for us, in our case, that is the orange. That is one of the main colors for our game. What you can also do is, if the artist hasn't been as accurate as our artist here, Josh, has been, what we can actually do is multiply this to increase this or decrease this. any which way that you want. So what I can do is I can multiply this, add it into my roughness. So A in our multiply is the texture sample, and then we can actually multiply this by a number, or a constant in this case. So if we multiply it by 0, we're getting rid of all of that roughness, so it's going to become super glossy. And you can see that on there. So 0 is super glossy. And then if we turn this up, it is going to be more rough or more diffused. So if we set this to something like 5, you are going to see it's now going to have a very matte finish. But depending on the type of game that you want, this is where you've really got to control it. This game, EmberVein in this case, is a very stylized game. So what we don't want is something that is super glossy. That's more something that you'd use in a game that's a little bit more realistic. In EmberVein, we just go for very minimal and quite a rough finish actually, but we do use a little bit of shine and a little bit of roughness in a couple of places where it needs to be, but we try not to overuse it too much. Another type of texture map that we're using in EmberVein is our height map, and this just gives us another little bit of extra height. And I can bring this in by just hooking it up to our pixel depth offset there. So as you can see now, our material is really starting to pop, which is great. So now that we've done that, we've got one asset out of the way. What we're going to do is go ahead and look at bringing in some more assets. So while I'm bringing in those assets, let's go ahead and answer some questions from the community. So what I have got is one question here, which is sort of asking about sort of standing. Me, when I'm working, I actually stand up the whole time. I've got a standing desk. I don't use a chair. I don't even have a chair in my office, believe it or not. It's much better for my health, and it also helps me a lot with productivity as well. When I'm standing up and I'm talking, I feel like I'm very vocal, and I can really, I can really get into this. And also, over Christmas, I put on a little bit of weight. What can I say? I need to get in that little bit of exercise. Another question that I've got here is there a trailer or any info for this game? For those of you that do want to check out EmberVein, you 100% can. We do have a website that you can go ahead and check out, which is embervein.com. And we also have a community Discord server where we are releasing little bits of information here and there as we're building the prototype for EmberVein. Every couple of months, we also release a devlog to show off some of the new changes that we have made to the game. But the best place to find out a little bit about EmberVein is to check out the website, which you should be able to see on the screen now. Let's see if there is any other questions. Okay, so moving on, if I have missed any of your questions, guys, please be sure to go ahead and drop them in the Discord server, as I'm not able to answer every single question on the live stream. I'm only able to sort of answer the questions that are going to value everyone in the community, or a large portion of the community. I can't go into the very specific things for your specific project on this live stream, but I'll try and help out where I can. Any questions that I'm not able to answer for you guys, make sure you do go ahead and check out the Discord server and speak to myself or the admins or any of the other 5,000 developers that are on that Discord server. Again, the links for which are on the are in the description. So moving on to the next assets. The next asset I'm going to bring in, use a couple of different textures as well, just to give it a different look. And you're going to see exactly what I mean by that in just a moment as I import it. And I'm going to be using this same main folder that I've got here. So my materials, my textures, and all of that good stuff. So I'm just going to be importing this in just a second. And I'm going to open this up, and what I've got here is I've actually got two parts to this. So I have got the container itself, and I've also got this Vials bit as well, or Vials rather. And this is going to have a emissive texture which controls glow, and you're going to get to see this in just a second. So let's go ahead and go over to our static meshes folder. We are going to bring in our sm_Vials. We're going to make sure skeletal mesh is turned off. And then we are going to go ahead and press import on this. And what you're going to see is I've got our Vials here, and we've actually got two materials because this static mesh that we've got is made up of two materials, believe it or not. We've got one for the main container, and then we've got one for the glowing bit on the inside. And you're going to see this come to life in just a moment. But for now, let's go ahead and go to our textures folder. And I am going to bring in my Vials. I'm just going to drag and drop those textures into there. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the container also. So now, as you can see, we're really starting to build up a library of textures in here. So what I'm going to do is go to my materials folder. We're going to add a new material, and we're going to call this m_vials_body. And then in here, we can now start forming the material for the body of our mesh. The mesh looks like this. So like I said, you've got a container, but then you've got a glowing element on the inside. But you can't really tell that without the material. So let's go ahead and start making this. Okay, so go to our textures folder. And let's start off with the container bit. So container_main. We're going to select this. And then I'm just going to drag and drop this in here and hook it up to our diffuse. And again, what you're seeing is actually quite a muted or dull looking material that you've got here. So with that done, let's go ahead and bring in the other textures. So we have got our height map. So I'm going to bring this in. We've also got our metallic, which is going to tell the engine which parts are metal, which in this case is pretty much all of it. And then we have also got our normal map, which is going to give us this fake depth. So as soon as I plug this in, you're really going to start to see that. So there you are. You can see we've now got plenty of detail there. And then last but not least, I've also got my roughness map, which is going to control how glossy this should be. So this is what really gives it that metallic, realistic looking feeling. And again, because this is a stylized game, we're not going super high gloss. We're not going super realistic in that sense. So with that done, if I go ahead and press apply on this, you can see we've got a nice looking material. But what I've also got is one other texture that I didn't use in the other asset, and this is an emissive. This emissive is going to tell the engine to add a little bit of glow to this. So what I'm going to do, move these, take my emissive, bring in a texture sample again by holding down T, and I'm going to hook this up to our emissive color. And if I now go ahead and look around my material, there is going to be some slight emissive elements, and you can see there's a bit of a glow. And when we bring this into the game, you are going to be able to see that. So let's go ahead and put this on our mesh. So go over to our Vials, and then on our container, we are going to be setting this to our material that we just made for the body, which is this one. And as you can see here now, we have now got an ever so slight glow. If I bring this static mesh into our scene, you can now see this. But what you might notice is the strength of the glow is not that much. It's not very strong. So what I can actually do is go into my materials, I can open this up, and I can actually multiply that emissive in the same way we did with the roughness earlier on. So I'm going to multiply A, which is going to be our texture sample, by a constant. And the constant that we're working with here is I'm going to multiply this by 5, which is actually going to make this 5 times brighter. Or we could even set this to 50 to make it even brighter than that. And you can now actually see a little bit of bloom around that. So let's go ahead and press apply and wait for it to load up. And you can, as you can see here now, it actually feels like it's a little bit lighter, like it's actually got a little bit of glow. And sometimes this is just where yourself as a developer inside of Unreal Engine, you've got to really take what the artist has made and fine-tune it for the environment or the game that you're looking for, because the artist can't always get it 100%. They need to have continuity, and they can't have that continuity without being in the level or the game itself. So with that done, what I'm going to now do is add a new material, which is m_Vials_container, which is actually the middle bit here, which is our second material now, which is currently all white. And we are then going to go to our textures, and this time we've got some nice simple materials. We've got our diffuse, and we've also got our emissive. Now, what we've also got for this is a height map, a metallic map, a normal map, and a roughness map. But in this case, I'm actually choosing not to use all of the textures that the artist has used, because I don't want to waste performance on textures where you're just not going to see it. Because this asset is going to be glowing so much, we don't need to have a normal map in the center. We don't need to have roughness because it's not metal, it's glowing, it's liquid. So I'm going to be ignoring these. I'm just going to take my emissive, I'm going to multiply this by a constant, and we're going to be setting this to 50. So we've got quite a nice bright glow just like that. If we go to our static mesh, we go to our container that we've just done, and as you can see here, I've got a second material slot. So this is where I can actually go in and I can set this to the material that we just created, which is m_Vials_container, and we've now got that middle bit in there. So we have got a bit of a black part and metallic part to this, but it's so small that it's just not worth me using those other textures that we've got. If I go ahead and jump into our scene, you can see that this is really starting to come to life. If I go to my unlit view, you can really start to see these assets in here. What I can even do is bring in some lights just to make these a little bit more visible, just like that. Or better yet, I can take my skylight, go to my details, and I can turn up the intensity of this. So I'm going to set this to 6 or even 8, maybe even 10, just so I can see my assets a little bit more clearly. So I've got another good question here, which is what 3D software is powering these assets that are being made? And that's a really good question. And honestly, it comes down to personal preference of the artist that's making it. On the EmberVein team, we have actually got 2 artists that are working on 3D models, one of which is a Maya user, one of which is a 3ds Max user, and both are equally powerful. It just depends on personal preference. One of them prefers the other, one of them prefers the other one, really. But it is generally going to be Autodesk software that is used to make these models that you're seeing in EmberVein and pretty much most industry game that you're going to see, to be honest. What you also have is another great piece of software, which is Blender, which is free, which is becoming more and more powerful for making assets just like this. But where the real magic happens is using Substance to paint and make all the textures for these assets. Another good question that I've got here is what code is used in EmberVein. So we actually have a mixture of C++ and blueprints in here. So we use blueprints for some things like artificial intelligence and user interface, but the majority of the code itself for this game is made in C++ because it's way more efficient, it runs faster, and ultimately you have a little bit more control over exactly what you're doing. If you have any other questions about using C++ or Blueprints or even Unreal Engine, be sure to go ahead and join the Discord server. Again, the links for which are in the description. Also, just before we move on to our assets, I just want to take a moment to ask you guys again, if you're enjoying this video, if you're watching it, be sure to go ahead and drop a like. If you want to share it with some of your friends or colleagues or anything like that, make sure you go ahead and drop a share on it. But I can see we've currently got 120 people watching this live stream. If I can get you guys, just go ahead and give us a like or even a dislike if you're not enjoying it. Just go ahead and let us know exactly, what it is. So another question is, we've got some questions about sort of, how many programmers are on the project. So there is actually one programmer on the project. His name is Evan. He's actually commenting in the chat. He does pretty much all of the code for EmberVein. What I do myself, I am more in a technical artist and production role myself. So in terms of bringing everything together from animation to programming to modeling to code, I bring all of that in with the experience that I've got, and also sort of manage the design and a whole bunch of other stuff on the project. But we just have one programmer on the team, Evan. He is absolutely great. He is very, very skilled in programming. He can do everything from setting up like the animation code to the AI code and a whole bunch more, but it is just one programmer on the team. The team itself for EmberVein is actually not that big. It's only 11 of us on the team at the moment. So compared to a lot of projects like Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty, where they have teams of hundreds and hundreds of full-time developers, we are a very small team. We are an indie team, in fact. So moving on, let's go ahead and bring in another asset and see what we can learn next. So what I'm going to do is download another container from the artist on the team that has been made here. And I'm going to be importing these in. So I'm going to go to my static meshes folder, add in my larger crate, making sure that is not a skeletal mesh, and then I'm just going to go ahead and import this in here. And what we've got now is a slightly larger box here that we can use. Again, it's all white because there's no textures and no materials. So we're going to do something about that. I'm going to go to my textures folder, I'm going to go to my textures, and I'm just going to simply drag and drop and bring these textures into the engine. With that done, I'm going to be creating a brand new material, and we're going to be giving this the name m_large container. Open this up, and then we are going to be setting in our diffuse for this. So large crate diffuse, bring this into our texture sample. This is going to set out the color. We are then going to take in our height map to give that a little bit of height. We're going to bring in our large crate normal to give us that fake depth, which you're going to see in 3, 2, and 1. There we go. So now we can see we've got a little bit more detail there. We're going to be bringing in our roughness, our metallic, and then with this, we don't have any emissives, so that is pretty much our material. If we go ahead and press apply, we can bring this in, take it to our large crate, and we're just going to dump that into our material slot, which in this case was m_large crate. And as you can see there, it now very quickly looks and feels like a different asset with our materials and textures on there. So as you can see now, what we've done over the course of this live stream is we have created some very nice looking materials using a whole variety of different textures. And I hope that you guys have actually managed to take something away from this while I've done it. So learning about all of the different texture types, such as roughness, metallic, diffuse, emissive, height, normal, and all of that good stuff. But this is how our materials are actually set up in EmberVein. And there is ways to control just how they're going to look with the roughness, how I showed you, how you can multiply it. And it's the same with the emissive as well. Also, thank you for the comment on the power core thing in the middle, saying it looks like Halo. Halo is a game that I absolutely adored when I was younger. I played it for a very, very long time. Spent countless summers on Halo 3. Just million people bringing out that that Infinity Sword and just having a bit of fun. EmberVein, you know, while it's got some sort of old Victorian vibes, it is also a bit of a sci-fi kind of game at the same time as well. So we have got a couple more assets that I am going to be bringing into EmberVein for tonight, but not necessarily on this live stream, as I feel like we have, you know, we've taught a lot on here already. So what I'm going to be doing is just taking a few last questions about Unreal and game development, and then we are going to be ending off this live stream, and I want you guys to go ahead and create some materials of your own. Creating materials is really fun, it's really easy, and you can get some really, really nice results, and you can use materials to really up the fidelity of your game, and I hope you've taken that away from this live stream. So any more questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Again, like I said, if there is any questions that you guys have got that I've not been able to answer, then make sure that you just drop it in the Discord, the link for which is in the description again. So let's see. That's a very cheeky question. Would you join me on a project? At the moment, I'm not taking on any additional projects. I've got a lot on my plate with my full-time job in the military, and then also EmberVein and creating all the Dev Squad Academy stuff. Unfortunately, I can't help with that one, but if you're looking for other developers for your team, just in the same way I found the developers for my team, just ask in the Discord. There's actually a looking for talent section, so you can find yourself some talent, find yourself some aspiring developers just like yourself to join your team. Another good question here is, where do I start to learn? Starting to learn Unreal by no means is an easy task. It's really good to have a set direction, and I'm going to try and set that out and make it a little bit easy for you. So if you're trying to learn Unreal Engine just as a generalist, then what I would say is check out my level design series, which is going to teach you the editor and your world building and all of that good stuff. So you're going to be able to learn how to create the levels like you've seen in the previous EmberVein development logs. What you then want to move on to is my blueprint course, which is going to teach you a little bit about Unreal Engine's visual scripting language, which is blueprints, which is going to give you the functionality of your game, the gameplay for your game, that is. You're also going to need to then move on to some of my other stuff, such as my UI series to bring in your menus, your heads-up displays, and you're also going to need to learn a little bit about I've got a little bit lost there. So we've got our blueprints, we've got our UI, our animation side of things. So the animation blueprint side of things to take animation data and turn it into something that can actually be used in a game itself. So that's, go ahead and check that out. So ideally in that order, so level design for the editor, blueprint for the code, and then animation and UI. And then if you want to specialize in anything, by all means, go ahead and sort of move on to that after that, but get the basics down first from those courses, level design and blueprints. So we have got loads and loads of questions coming in here, so thank you everyone for putting in lots of challenges for that. So let's see what we can find. You're looking thick. Do you work out? No, I've just had Christmas with the family and I've eaten a lot of food. Normally I am a lot lighter than I am now and a lot more in shape. But yes, I will be as soon as lockdown is over. I'll be getting in shape and getting sort of deployment ready again. Okay, next question. Do you have a list of challenges to practice in Unreal Engine? This is actually a really good question. And the reason for that is because you are going to need to complete challenges in Unreal Engine to learn it, because you can watch tutorials and tutorials and tutorials and just follow them, but if you don't try it for yourself, you're not going to learn. And in terms of challenges, just try and create something small that you're interested in, because if you're not interested in it, then it's not going to be fun. You're going to get bored, you're going to get frustrated, and you're going to stop. So build something small. And the reason why I say small is because if you try and make the next Call of Duty or the next Halo or Assassin's Creed, you're not going to get it done. Realistically, it is what it is. Teams for games like that, they have over 200 people, sometimes in some cases even 400-500 people working on it full time. Make something small. Start on 2D or start on a small game and just complete loads of little challenges and learn as you go along. And game jams is actually a really good way for you guys to learn game development, because you're going to be pushing yourself to learn new skills. So one game that you might make might have more on the animation side of things, one might have more on the UI side of things. And creating those smaller challenges, or smaller games rather, that's where you're going to be really going in and learning new things. So try small game jams, small challenges, just don't go too big. Okay, so let's take a look at some more questions here. We have just got so many questions here. Another odd question, where is that accent from? I'm from the United Kingdom. I live just outside of London, in the hearty town of Surrey, which, believe it or not, is pretty much the game dev capital of the UK. We've got all sorts of different game dev companies there, including Epic Games. Their UK head office is actually in Guildford, actually about half a mile, so walking distance from my house. There's also a whole bunch of other developers in there, such as EA. They're also walking distance from my house, so I'm prime location next to a whole bunch of other game developers in the UK. Okay. Do you need a degree to work at a game dev job? Absolutely not. You do not need a degree to get a game development job. What a degree does for you, though, is it really points you in the right direction and it holds you accountable to learning game development, if that's the degree that you're going for. A lot of people, they do learn by themselves and they're able to pick up game development and be completely self-taught and really good at it. But for some people, a degree is really good because it pushes you. You've got someone mentoring you. But when it comes to the actual hiring process of joining a team or working for a company, they don't look for the degree. They look at what you do and your portfolio. So if you have a good portfolio, not having a degree is not going to matter at all. It just shows that you're dedicated and you've had that support and you've got that quality of work. But your portfolio can also speak for itself. So you don't need to spend loads of money on a very expensive degree. And this is something that a lot of people, ask about a lot. Having that degree, it definitely helps, but if you have an outstanding portfolio, then by all means you are not going to need one. But if you have two people, one person with the same quality of work and another person with the same quality of work, the degree is definitely going to help. Programming, however, having a degree is super important. You're going to have a little bit of trouble getting a programming job without a degree, but when it comes to the arts, so for example, animation and 3D modeling, for example, portfolio first, degree second. Okay, so let's take a look at some more questions. I could go on about the whole degree thing for so long, but I'm not going to do that. Any guides for advanced blueprints? That's a really good question. So when it comes to advanced blueprints, honestly, there is so many specific little things for advanced programming that it's very difficult to teach it or to bring it all together, because all of these little things, there's no set order that you can learn them in. You've got to sort of learn them one by one as you go through those little challenges. So the best thing to do is learn the stuff that I've taught blueprint wise, and then get involved in creating some games such as the FPS and the RPG stuff, which is some advanced blueprint code in there. And then what you really want to do if you want to take that to the next level is, instead of watching my tutorial, start adapting that yourself. Start making your own game, and that's going to really push you to learn about all of these sort of specific little things for the advanced side of things. But the real advanced side of things when it comes to blueprint is just logic, and that is all in the head, believe it or not. So sort of understanding how you're going to write your code, writing it efficiently, quickly, cleanly, and ultimately to make your gameplay happen, you need logic, and that's all a mental process. It's not something that you can be taught necessarily. So hopefully that should that should sort of help you guys talk go through a couple of things. I know I have just absolutely rambled on there about a whole bunch of different topics, such as the degree thing, the advanced thing, learning game development. I love having these conversations with you guys about learning game development. That's what these live streams are for. Not only is it an opportunity for me to work on EmberVein, but it's an opportunity for me to teach you guys as I go along, so you can teach the same kind of thing that I use in a game that is going to be released to the masses in the future. So in terms of questions, that is absolutely everything that I am going to be covering for tonight. I do hope you have enjoyed this live stream. Before I do end it, if I can get you guys to go ahead and drop a like on this video, I would really appreciate it. For those of you that aren't in our Discord, make sure you do go ahead and join our Discord, the link for which is in the description. A couple of things I want to talk about just before I do go ahead and end the live stream is we have got a brand new content schedule which has been released to our Patreons to let them know exactly when our next batches of content is going to be released. But what you are going to be able to see is a live stream every single Saturday. The next live stream that we're doing is at this time on Saturday next week, but we are going to be playing through the games that have been made for the Game Jam. For those of you that are working on the Game Jam, make sure you get your game submitted early, ideally sort of tomorrow, as accidents do happen, bugs do happen. You want to make sure you get your game in before the deadline, so leave yourself a day to fix any bugs or make sure that it's all uploaded, make sure it's in there. But for those of you that aren't making a game for the Game Jam, go ahead and check out our itch.io page, the link for which again is in the description. There's a whole bunch of games made by our community on there that you can download and play for free, and ultimately sort of see what other game developers are doing, new game developers that is, and see what you could be doing yourself. But for now, that is pretty much everything. One other note I'd like to mention is if you'd like more live streams like this and to help make these possible, be sure to check out our Patreon page to unlock a whole bunch of rewards and perks from the Dev Squad Academy and myself that are going to help you with game development, such as project templates, early access to videos, and a whole bunch of other stuff like one-to-ones and such. But for now, that is absolutely everything, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this live stream. Stay awesome, keep creating, but for now...